Hey, and welcome back to the Business Real Talk. This special episode, I'm actually filming up in the snowy mountains of California in Big Bear. So welcome with me. And as a reminder, this is episode 2 of a 4-part series all about sales. So if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I highly recommend you start there. As a refresher, last week we talked about the reason why you're attracting those freebie seekers, AKA low intent clients, is only because you're using low intent messaging. I also shared with you exactly how to develop those high intent messaging strategies so that you can attract clients who are ready to invest within days of meeting you and seeing you as the gift they are thankful to have. So on today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into how you can get your clients to sell themselves into working with you before you even get on a sales call. Now, before we jump into that, I just need to do a bit of venting here from about those front seat, back seat, anywhere seat drivers. And specifically, I hate driving with someone who refuses to let me put the destination into the GPS. Now, hear me out, because we're going somewhere with all of this, and it applies directly to your sales process. I'm sure you've had this type of person hop into the car and say, "Don't worry, I know exactly where we're going, and you don't even need to put this into Google Maps or Waze." Or even worse, they tell you that you don't need the address at all because they can explain it to you. And they give you some crazy, confusing directions like, "Hey, it's really simple. Just turn left at the McDonald's and then make an immediate right at the Blue Church and then go straight past 5 telephone poles. And then you see a mailbox with a deer on it. And then you count 3 more houses and then you're there. Easy peasy, no problem whatsoever." Can we all agree for a second that bad directions are going to get you lost, right? Because advice is like the directions that we use to navigate through our business. And like those confusing directions, bad advice can cause delays, missed destinations, accidents, and honestly, unnecessary confusion. What makes things even worse and more confusing is when everyone keeps repeating the same bad advice over and over and over again. Nowhere is this more abundant than in sales. And if there were to be an area of business that is littered with the most amount of bad advice given enthusiastically, it would be sales. So let's start here. I'm almost sure that everyone listening has been told that they should pre-qualify their leads before getting on sales calls. And on the surface level, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, if you're trying to book your calendar full of calls, you want to make sure that your every spot is booked with someone who is actually qualified for your offer. But here's the truth. Pre-qualified leads absolutely might be killing your sales. And you might be asking yourself, "Wait, what did you say, Naz?" And I can already hear someone in the background saying something like, "Naz, I have a funnel that's booking me 15 calls a week with pre-qualified leads, and I thought that was a good thing." And you would probably be right, because that's all you hear. Every ad, every opportunity on social media is telling us that we just need dozens of calls booked on our calendar or for our team. And I totally get that you're thinking this, because gather round, this piece of information is so important. Pre-qualified leads do not equal more ready to buy clients. Somewhere along the line, we were told that as long as we pre-qualified our leads, that they would be ready to buy. And so inevitably we'd get on the phone, they'd hit us with an objection, and we felt like, what am I doing wrong here? So you booked more calls, pre-qualified even harder, and still objections. Because pre-qualified simply means that they have the ability to buy, but the responsibility of actually being able to get them to buy is still on you. And I don't know about you, but I'm really not interested in being that used car salesman, putting pressure on clients, convincing them to buy because they're pre-qualified. So supposedly they should want to buy. And maybe you feel like you're handling objections all the way to the bank. Because let's be real, there's some difference between window shopping, or what I call browse buyers, who's just looking around but isn't quite ready to buy yet, and that highly motivated now buyer who has their money ready, wants to buy, has done their research, and is literally in an active state of buying. Your pre-qualified buyer may have the means, but that doesn't actually mean that they have the intent or the desire, which means they don't necessarily know they have a problem. Or maybe that problem just isn't a priority for them now. They haven't spent the time figuring out what solutions there are, nonetheless knowing what the right solution is for them. Because real talk, pre-qualification focuses on you and what you need, not what your client needs in order to make a decision. So if your goal is to get on calls with prospects who come to buy, are motivated to say yes, so that you're not getting on a large quantity of maybe 10 plus calls per week with these so-called pre-qualified clients, trying to convince just a few to say yes, then you need to focus on pre-sold leads. And what you need to make sure is that you're really listening in on this episode, because I'm about to drop some major truth bombs. And I don't want you to just throw this on 2x speed and kind of maybe go through hearing this. I want you to really understand the difference, because I'm about to majorly blow up what sales has been taught up until this point. And especially if you're tired of hearing people say, I can't afford it, or someone saying, can I just think about it? Or maybe they're even saying, this is perfect, this is exactly what I'm looking for, but now just isn't the right time. Maybe in 2 months, it'll be perfect. Can we talk then? And maybe you're excited that you've booked 15 calls on your calendar, but only 3 showed up. And if you're lucky, maybe 1 says yes after you followed up for the 4th time, but you're dragging them to show up to the calls, and the whole process starts to feel like a chore. If you're hearing any of these, or worse yet, somebody saying one of these things and then turning around and buying from your competitor at twice the rate that you were charging, you know what I'm talking about, and you know how frustrating this is. And this episode is specifically for you. Because here's the truth. It's not that you're bad at sales. It's that your marketing isn't doing the heavy lifting and pre-selling your audience for you. And let me share a story from my life and exactly what I experienced myself, so you can see the rapid changes that can happen when you really understand this and make a shift. 4 years ago, I honestly messaged a business friend of mine and said, I was done. I was ready to close my group, my email list, everything. I was ready to start from scratch, because I was seriously done from tirelessly feeling like I was cultivating a community, creating valuable content. I was giving all of me in hopes that I would be able to impact lives and scale a successful business. I was truly exhausted. And sure, my business was quote unquote working, but I was also working myself to the bone in trying to keep it going. And my family was frustrated. My kids were frustrated. I could never turn off, because I was always looking for that next call, for that next client. And I mean, the whole reason I left a successful corporate career was because I wanted to make an impact. And I wanted the time and freedom to not only be there for my family, but to have a time to actually enjoy my life. But let's be real, that's not what I was finding. Instead, I was putting in more hours just to keep the lights on in my business. And it felt like my entire world was just a bunch of leads who would seem excited, but they would never actually invest or buy. And what made things even more frustrating is that I'd have well-attended lives, workshop launches, and really awesome open rates. So it felt like I was doing something right, but clearly I was missing something, because business clients weren't showing up. They were barely trickling in. And I wanted to be able to open the faucet and have clients pouring in. But it truly felt impossible with the people in my world. You see, I didn't know yet what I know now. So instead, I blamed everybody else, starting with my audience. And can you guess what I was saying to myself, or anyone who would listen? I bet you can, because I bet if you're relating to this story, then it's probably what you're saying to yourself and others right now. I was telling myself that the problem was that I had the wrong people. I just kept telling myself that if I had more people, or the right people, my business would be so much further along. How familiar does this sound for you? Because it really should. I see so many coaches and gurus that are supposedly experts basing their entire pitch off of this limiting belief. They'll tell you you're not getting any sales because you have the wrong people, that you have the wrong audience, and that you just need to consistently grow and get more people there. I experienced this. I paid for those high-ticket coaching programs that told me exactly those things, and felt so frustrated because I was bringing in 300 to 500 leads and it wasn't going anywhere. And it feels like you're not getting any sales because you don't have enough leads or booked calls. And once you get a calendar filled with the right people, all of your problems will be solved. And maybe you've hired those appointment setters, the closers, the agencies who promised you the world and yet left you high and dry with thousands of dollars spent, only to feel like you're no closer to your goals, yet you spent hundreds of hours on booked calls. Now, I want to tell you the honest to God truth. As someone who's helped over 400 coaches and expert businesses successfully create an easy yes sales system, I'm going to tell you here and now that following this advice is only going to get you frustrated, lost, and maybe even in debt. I myself had to realize that this line of thinking feels easy because it puts the blame outside of ourselves. For me, it wasn't until I took a hard step back that I got honest with myself and my business, and I admitted that I didn't actually have a people problem. So if you're listening to me while multitasking, this is where you're going to take a quick pause, because I'm about to share with you the real talk we all need to hear. The truth is, we rarely ever have a people problem. It's not that people aren't buying or that you don't know where the people are who want your services. This is the lesson I had to learn. The problem was me. The problem isn't out there. The problem is you. But I want to be specific. It's not you as like your personality. The problem is your messaging. The problem is your positioning. You don't have a message that clearly articulates the massive value that you have, speaks to people in a way that makes them stop in their tracks at full attention, and gets them running full speed to your inbox because they believe and understand that you speak to them in a way that nobody else does and it resonates above all others. Because the truth of the matter is, the right clarity around how we articulate what we do and how we do that to the people who are ready to buy means that we have people coming to us, not us chasing them down. The second piece of that puzzle is right now, maybe you have people coming into your world and it feels like they're the perfect fit. They're ready to go. You're right on that verge, but you haven't quite positioned yourself in a way that gets them to see you as the only solution to their problems. And the problem with that becomes, if they can compare you to other solutions, they will. And they will most likely either look for a cheaper alternative or someone else who can do this in a way that nobody else can. Hence why oftentimes you feel overlooked and somebody goes and works with somebody else for 2 times the price that you do. And I know that maybe you've heard this somewhere before. Oh, the problem is your messaging. And maybe you've even tried to rewrite your copy or your hooks, and you filled out an ideal customer workshop and all of those other things. That's not what I'm talking about here. Instead, you need to create your messaging and positioning with the understanding that ready to invest clients have a very specific way of making buying decisions, and that your messaging and positioning should take them on a journey that check marks every mental buying decision they need so that they arrive at your sales call pre-sold, ready to buy, credit card in hand, saying, I already knew I wanted to work with you before I even got on that call. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, most of us confuse this with pre-qualifying. And I'm going to totally clarify this for you because we believe that the problem is the leads we're talking to just aren't qualified enough. But let's be honest, they can look perfect on paper. And how many times have you felt like someone told you they can't afford you or right now isn't the right time? And then they check back and a few weeks later, like we said, they signed up for another program that was more expensive than yours. The truth of the matter is, pre-qualifying your prospects isn't enough to hear yes. And I know this is so confusing because we hear every sales mentor talking about this all the time about pre-qualifying prospects as if that was the end all be all to converting more sales. So you're spending all of your time creating a fancy application that has dozens of questions and weeds out those serious buyers. And you're in the DMs, you're going back and forth for hours on end, for months on end, trying to get a feel for whether that person is a good fit for you and your services and whether or not they're financially qualified, all in hopes that you avoid that horrible feeling of getting on calls with people that end with saying something like, that sounds great, but I can't afford it. Okay, because let's face it, those words echo in your head and you start to wonder why you just spent hours on a sales call or a sales process with nothing to show for it. Because pre-qualification does not equal conversions. Pre-qualification focuses on you, not your potential client. And when your goal is to help them to say yes, you need to focus on pre-selling them, not pre-qualifying them. This is the difference between hearing a client message you saying, I already know I want to work with you, versus getting on a call, spending all your time hoping to convince them to say yes. Pre-qualified leads equal tire kickers. Pre-sold leads equal conversions. Think of it like this. Have you ever been on a date or had a friend tell you about a date where the other person talked the entire time? By the end, you know that person's whole life story, how their job is going, everything you could possibly know, and then some crammed into a first date. And you're polite and kind, so maybe you even ask some follow-up questions along the way, which just prompted more and more talking. What is so shocking is that oftentimes, if you ask that over talker, hey, how do you think that date went? They will almost always share, it went great. We talked the whole time. But unfortunately, since their strategy was almost entirely focused on themselves, that was highly unlikely to make it to a date too. See, if we only use silence as a measure of a bad date, then this person is correct. There was no silence. Someone was talking the entire time. But a relationship isn't a one-way street. I want to repeat that. A relationship is not a one-way street. For the date to be successful, they have to ask you questions. They have to show respect and interest in you by not just talking, but actively listening. Now, I know this is hard to recognize that this isn't maybe what you feel like you're doing in your pre-qualification process, but it is the same thing. In your entire sales process, is you just simply pre-qualifying your leads, then it has become a one-way street. And there's often left thinking, well, I guess the person selling the program thinks I'm a perfect fit, but as the buyer, I'm not really sure if this is still what I need. Now stick with me here, okay? Because I can already hear somebody in the back whispering to their friend, how is that date story the same thing? And I get it. You're not oversharing. Maybe you're not even over talking. You're actually asking questions. You're letting the other person share. But your pre-qualifying questions, even though they are questions, are setting you up for a one-way street interaction where you learn about the leads, but you're not able to learn anything about you, your business, and most importantly, how your offer is the incomparable solution they've been looking for. Or you spend all your time pitching them and it feels like you're talking a lot about what you're doing, but it doesn't land. In other words, the entire process focuses on your needs, what you want out of the situation, and not your potential client. And I'm going to go into more clarity around this because even if you're shaking your head being like, I don't do this, I promise I care about my clients, you actually want to create a process that allows your leads to pre-qualify you. The reason this is so important is because you don't want to feel like you have to use high pressure sales. You don't want to feel like you have to get your pitch perfect every single time because that's impossible. You might have a bad day. You might be feeling like you're frustrated after 4 or 5 bad calls and you're not showing up on that call perfectly. And so if you feel like you have to put all the pressure on your sales call, guess what? You're already setting yourself up to fail. What we want to do instead is have your people showing up to your call, knowing that you are exactly who they're looking for, even before you open your mouth to say a single thing. And trust me, myself, my clients, we've all experienced this, being able to get on a call with someone who messages you right after they book the call saying, I already know I want to work with you. I just had a couple of questions about what offer would be best for me. And we know what it feels like to get on a call, have the person blurt out, I already know I want to work with you. Last week, I got on a call with someone and I was going through my whole process of breaking down what it looks like to work with me. And she stopped me and said, you don't need to convince me. I already know I want to work with you. I'm ready. I want you to know that experience. I want you to understand that it doesn't have to be you pushing and pressuring people every single step of the way. And it's the reason why my Easy Yes method is so focused on supporting your potential clients to make quick and easy, empowered decisions by eliminating that competition and positioning you as the only and incomparable option. Because getting more yeses is more about your potential client than about you. And pre-selling them allows you to confidently and quickly make decisions, which means more yeses on sales calls. All right, so we've now covered how that fancy pre-qualifying process is one of the biggest pitfalls business owners are making right now in their sales process. And we've even talked about how even though it's the first thing every sales guru will teach you, it actually creates that nightmare date scenario where it's all focused on the other person without much reciprocity. Now, I want to talk about one other mistake that people make in their sales process. And I want to start here with a question. Have you ever had a lead on a sales call? Maybe you're an hour in and you just feel totally connected and aligned. You're thinking there like, this is the exact person I want to work with. The stars have aligned. Oh my gosh, this is it. And you're totally vibing. Heck, you even realize that you both just watched the most obscure TV show on Netflix and you had a great laugh together about a character you both love to hate. So you finally say to each other, okay, this is amazing. I can't wait to work with you on a deeper level. So let's talk about what this looks like. And you tell them your offer, you give them your pitch, the investment, and you mentally prepare for yourself to pop the champagne in order for that expensive sushi because they're ready to celebrate. Only to hear the dreaded, look, you're amazing. And honestly, I feel like I've made a lifelong friend today. But I just want to stay in touch and support you. Right now, it's just not the right time. You just got totally friend zoned. And it feels like hearing that no, even though it was so positive, is still the absolute worst feeling. And it's even more frustrating when you feel like you checked all the boxes, you were totally connected, and it isn't just emotionally stressful to get on calls and hear no. It's also frustrating from a strategic standpoint and the resources of time, energy, team that goes into it. And it often feels like no matter how much you think through it, you just can't seem to put your finger on why those ready to invest clients aren't saying yes now. So you start to ask yourself if it's your offers. And if you had a lower priced entry offer, they'd buy. But you put that out there and people are still saying, oh, I wish, but maybe next time. I just invested in another program. The truth is, it's not your offer's job to help people say yes. And most business owners focus so much on their offer itself that they completely overlook the triggers that get people to self-lead themselves to saying yes in the first place without you pushing them. And I know this because this was my story for so long, okay? And I told myself and anyone who would listen that I just had an audience of looky-loos who'd never buy. And I felt like I just needed to start from scratch, build a whole other audience. Remember, I told you that whole story behind it. And I needed to figure out what the F was going on that made my audience act like they wanted to work with me, but they never actually invested in me. I spent months analyzing, studying, testing to see what would actually get people to buy. And what I found was that ready to invest clients had a very specific way of making buying decisions. And when I understood this, I could narrow in on 3 triggers that no matter what, once activated, made them buy with total and complete confidence. The first time I tested them out, one client paid in full, my highest investment, no questions asked. I thought it was a total fluke, so I tried again. Sure enough, another and another. And the truth was, it was never a fluke. No, these triggers, they follow our brain's natural way to make decisions. But when we tackle them, it gives our prospects this release, a dose of dopamine and clarity that lets them take action. Because the truth is, a mind in motion is already ready to take action, AKA make a decision. The problem is you're focusing on your offer. That offer has become your catalyst to get people to say yes, instead of letting them come to the conclusion that your solution is what they need. So let me explain with a quick example. Back in 2014, Casper Mattress decided that they wanted to be a billion-dollar company. It's a tall order for a new company that actually had no authority, very little money to invest in marketing, and no market share. And if you don't know this, the mattress market is kind of cutthroat. So they either had to realize that they needed to focus on their offer, AKA their mattress, and try and spend all of their time and money competing with the big names, which, let's be real, might work to some extent, but you're always going to require to one-up the other guy. Or they realized that they could focus on the end-to-end customer experience that allowed their prospects wanting to buy from them without them pushing them. So that's exactly what they did. With very little marketing spend, they didn't push, they didn't hard sell their offers, but rather they focused on allowing their prospects to come to that conclusion on their own. Here's what they did. They focused their marketing on really being able to help people self-diagnose the problem and then lead themselves to connecting to wanting to solve that problem. Then they crafted this experience that made them feel connected to the company. They said yes without nudging, discounting, or any of that. It happens almost naturally. And in understanding that, it becomes almost methodical to understand how people buy and giving them the map to self-leading themselves to a yes. These are the triggers that puts buying power in your hands, even if your audience feels like they came to it all on their own. This is exactly how my client Jane was able to transform her sales process. As soon as she implemented this forward motion philosophy into her sales process, she was able to massively move up her momentum have people who showed up to calls already ready to buy. Heck, she even had people who never even got on a call and said, I'm ready to buy from you. Now, I want you to imagine that you're on the top of a huge hill and you get this rather devious idea that you want to push a car down the hill. Now, in scenario A, the car is in park. It has the emergency parking brake on. Try all you want. That car isn't budging. Now, imagine instead that the car is in neutral. And all you need to do is give it a bit of a nudge, and that gravity will take it from here. At first, the car will slowly move forward and then pick up a bit of speed and then a bit more. And the next thing you know, you're wondering what possessed you to push this car down the big hill, because forward motion is just turning into even faster forward motion. This is what you want your sales process to look like. When you build a sales process around forward motion, your leads just continue to pick up momentum. In this case, the momentum is conversions. And when you focus on the conversions, you don't have to let down that exhausting route of scaling after hiring a salesperson or a setter or a closer or an integrator. And truth is, most entrepreneurs take this labor-intensive route to growing their business. And I don't want this for you. And this is why our sales strategy is about pre-selling clients. Without more calls on your calendar, without longer sales call, we actually cut those call times in half without hiring new team members, without showing up more on social media. This is the power of a sales system that pre-sells clients. You increase your revenue without increasing your work. Now, we can't cover every aspect of our Easy Yes sales system on this call. So if you want to take this deeper, if you want to learn what those 3 triggers that I talked about are, if you want to learn how to implement this into your sales system, then you have a few options, okay? Number 1, listen to the past episodes. Make sure you subscribe because you're going to get our future Real Talk episodes as soon as they're released. Or if you want to learn the entire process behind how my Easy Yes method works, head over to my bingeable mini series where I break down our entire Easy Yes method, and you can check it out now. It's on demand at easyesleads.com. Or if you're that high intent client, the person who already has listened to this and said, I get it. This is exactly what I need. Naz, you're speaking my language, and you want to learn how the Easy Yes method can help you double, triple, or even quadruple your sales conversions and turn those strangers into premium clients. I want to let you know that you can book a free blueprint call with me right now. What we're going to do on this call is we're going to actually look at your client acquisition. I'm going to highlight for you where those biggest gaps and opportunities are. And I'm going to show you how I can actually help you solve for those gaps so you can start getting Easy Yes clients now instead of 6 months from now. So you can exponentialize the growth that you have. So remember, you can go and find that link in the show notes down below at easyesleads.com/call. And remember, on next week's episode, we're going to cover one of my favorite topics ever, what I call objection obliteration. So make sure you subscribe and tune in for next week. But until next time, thanks for keeping it real.